The Magic Flute, K620, is an opera in 2 acts by Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart to a German libretto by Emanuel Schikaneder. The work is in the form of a Singspiel, a popular form that included both singing and spoken dialogue. The work premiered on the 30th of September 1791 at Schikaneder's theatre, the Freihaus-Theater Wieden in Vienna, just 2 months before the composer's premature death. In the opera, the Queen of the Night persuades Prince Tamino to rescue her daughter Pamina from captivity under the high priest Sarastro. Instead, he learns the high ideals of Sarastro's community and seeks to join it. Separately, then together, Tamino and Pamina undergo severe trials of initiation, which end in triumph with the Queen and her cohorts vanquished. The earthy Papageno, who accompanies Tamino on his quest, fails the trials completely but is rewarded anyway with the hand of his ideal female companion Papagena. Composition. The opera was the culmination of a period of increasing involvement by Mozart with Schikaneder's theatrical troupe, which since 1789 had been the resident company at the Theater.The Wieden. Mozart was a close friend of one of the singer-composers of the troupe, tenor Benedict Schack, and had contributed to the compositions of the troupe, which were often collaboratively written. Mozart's participation increased with his contributions to the 1790 collaborative opera Der Stein der Weisen, including the duet among other passages. Like the Magic Flute, Der Stein der Weisen was a fairy tale opera and can be considered a kind of precursor. It employed much the same cast in similar roles. The libretto for the Magic Flute, written by Schikaneder, draws on multiple sources, apparently including the medieval romance Wieden by Chrétien de Troyes, the novel Sethos by Jean Terrasson, and the essay on the mysteries of the Egyptians by Ignaz von Born. It is also a natural continuation of the series of fairy tale operas previously produced by Schikaneder's troupe, and of the Hanswurst tradition in Viennese popular theatre. In particular, it shares much of its plot and many of its characters with Sophie Celia's Singspiel Oberon, which had been readapted for the Schikaneder troupe and which established the tradition of fairy tale operas that culminated in the Magic Flute 2 years later. Most scholars also acknowledge a major influence of Freemasonry, discussed below. For detailed discussion of source, see libretto of the Magic Flute. In composing the opera, Mozart evidently kept in mind the skills of the singers intended for the premiere, which included both virtuosi and ordinary comic actors asked to sing for the occasion. Thus, the vocal lines for Papageno, sung by Schikaneder himself, and monostatos are often stated first in the strings so the singer can find his pitch, and are frequently doubled by instruments. In contrast, Mozart's sister-in-law Josepha Hofer, who premiered the role of the Queen of the Night, evidently needed little such help. This role is famous for its difficulty. In ensembles, Mozart skillfully combined voices of different ability levels. The vocal ranges of 2 of the original singers for whom Mozart tailored his music have posed challenges for many singers who have since recreated the roles. Both arias of the Queen of the Night, O Zither nicht, mein Liebesohn, and Der Holre Kogt in meinem Herzen, require high F6, rare in opera. At the low end, the part of Sarastro, premiered by Franz Xaver Gerl, includes a conspicuous F2 in a few locations. Premiere and reception. The opera was premiered in Vienna on the 30th of September 1791 at the suburban Freihaus-Theater Wieden. Mozart conducted the orchestra. Schikaneder himself played Papageno. while the role of the Queen of the Night was sung by Mozart's sister-in-law Josepha Hofer. On the reception of the opera, Mozart's scholar Maynard Solomon writes, "Although there were no reviews of the first performances, it was immediately evident that Mozart and Schikaneder had achieved a great success, the opera drawing immense crowds and reaching hundreds of performances during the 1790s. As Mozart's letters show, he was very pleased to have achieved such a success." Solomon continues, Mozart's delight is reflected in his last 3 letters, written to Constance, who with her sister Sophie was spending the second week of October in Baden. "I have this moment returned from the opera, which was as full as ever," he wrote on the 7th of October, listing the numbers that had to be encored. "But what always gives me the most pleasure is the silent approval. You can see how this opera is becoming more and more esteemed." He went to hear his opera almost every night, taking along relatives. The opera celebrated its 100th performance in November 1792, though Mozart did not have the pleasure of witnessing this milestone, as he had died the 5th of December 1791. The opera was first performed outside Vienna in Lemberg, then in Prague. It then made triumphal progress through Germany's opera houses great and small, and with the early 19th century spread to essentially all the countries of Europe, and eventually everywhere in the world where opera is cultivated. As Branscombe documents, the earlier performances were often of highly altered, sometimes even mutilated, versions of the opera. Productions of the past century have tended to be more faithful to Mozart's music, though faithful rendering of Mozart and Schikaneder's original stage directions and dramatic vision continues to be rare, with isolated exceptions. Modern productions strongly reflect the creative preferences of the stage director. The Magic Flute is presently the 4th most frequently performed opera worldwide. First publication, on the 28th of December 1791, 3½ weeks after Mozart's death, his widow Constance offered to send a manuscript score of the Magic Flute to the Electoral Court in Bonn. Nikolaus Simrock published this text in the first full score edition, claiming that it was in accordance with Mozart's own wishes. The Magic Flute and Freemasonry. The Magic Flute is noted for its prominent Masonic elements. Schikaneder and Mozart were Masons and Lodge brothers, as was Ignaz Alberti, engraver and printer of the first libretto. The opera is also influenced by Enlightenment philosophy, and can be regarded as an allegory advocating enlightened absolutism. The Queen of the Night represents a dangerous form of obscurantism, or, according to some, the anti-Masonic Roman Catholic Empress Maria Theresa, or, according to others, the contemporary Roman Catholic Church itself, which was also strongly anti-Masonic. Her antagonist Sarastro symbolizes the enlightened sovereign who rules according to principles based on reason, wisdom, and nature. The story itself portrays the education of mankind, progressing from chaos through religious superstition to rationalistic enlightenment, by means of trial and error, ultimately to make the earth a heavenly kingdom, and mortals like the gods. This couplet is sung in the finales to both acts. Roles. The names of the performers at the premiere are taken from a preserved playbill for this performance, which does not give full names. Our equals Herr, Mr. MME equals Madam, Mrs. MLLE equals Mademoiselle, Miss, while the female roles in the opera are assigned to different voice types. The playbill for the premiere performance referred to all of the female singers as sopranos. The casting of the roles relies on the actual vocal range of the part. Instrumentation. The work is scored for 2 flutes, 2 oboes, 2 clarinets, 2 bassoons, 2 horns, 2 trumpets, 3 trombones, timpani and strings. It also requires a 4-part chorus for several numbers. Mozart also called for a strumento d'acciaio to perform Papageno's magic bells, an instrument which has since been lost to history, though modern-day scholars believe it to be okayed glockenspiel, which is usually substituted with a celesta in modern-day performances. Charles Rosen has remarked on the character of Mozart's orchestration. Die Zauberflöte has the greatest variety of orchestral color that the 18th century was to know. The very lavishness, however, is paradoxically also an economy, as each effect is a concentrated one. Each one, Papageno's whistle, the Queen of the Night's coloratura, the bells, Sarastro's trombones, even the farewell in scene I for clarinets and pizzicato strings, have single dramatic stroke. Synopsis. The opera begins with the overture, which Mozart composed last. Scene 1. A rough, rocky landscape. Tamino, a handsome prince lost in a distant land, is pursued by a serpent and asks the gods to save him. He faints, and 3 ladies, attendants of the Queen of the Night, appear and kill the serpent. They find the unconscious prince extremely attractive, and each of them tries to convince the other 2 to leave. After arguing, they reluctantly decide to leave together. Tamino wakes up, and is surprised to find himself still alive. Papageno enters dressed as a bird. He describes his life as a bird catcher, complaining he has no wife or girlfriend. Tamino introduces himself to Papageno, thinking Papageno killed the serpent. Papageno happily takes the credit, claiming he strangled it with his bare hands. The 3 ladies suddenly reappear, and instead of giving him wine, cake and figs, they give him water, a stone, and place a padlock over his mouth as a warning not to lie. They give Tamino a portrait of the Queen of the Night's daughter Pamina, with whom Tamino falls instantly in love. The ladies return and tell Tamino that Pamina has been captured by Sarastro, who is a supposedly evil sorcerer. Tamino vows to rescue Pamina. The Queen of the Night appears and promises Tamino that Pamina will be his if he rescues her from Sarastro. The Queen leaves and the ladies remove the padlock from Papageno's mouth with a warning not to lie anymore. They give Tamino a magic flute which has the power to change sorrow into joy. They tell Papageno to go with Tamino and give him magic bells for protection. The ladies introduce 3 child spirits, who will guide Tamino and Papageno to Sarastro's temple. Together Tamino and Papageno set forth. Scene 2. A room in Sarastro's palace. Pamina is dragged in by Sarastro's slaves, apparently having tried to escape. Monostatos, a blackamoor-in-chief of the slaves, orders the slaves to chain her and leave him alone with her. Papageno, sent ahead by Tamino to help find Pamina, enters. Monostatos and Papageno are each terrified by the other's strange appearance and both flee. Papageno returns and announces to Pamina that her mother has sent Tamino to save her. Pamina rejoices to hear that Tamino is in love with her. She offers sympathy and hope to Papageno, who longs for a wife. Together they reflect on the joys and sacred duties of marital love. Finale. Scene 3. A grove in front of a temple. The 3 child spirits lead Tamino to Sarastro's temple, promising that if he remains patient, wise and steadfast, he will succeed in rescuing Pamina. Tamino approaches the left-hand entrance and is denied access by voices from within. The same happens when he goes to the entrance on the right. But from the entrance in the middle, an old priest appears and lets Tamino in. He tells Tamino that Sarastro is benevolent, not evil, and that he should not trust the Queen of the Night. He promises that Tamino's confusion will be lifted when Tamino approaches the temple as a friend. Tamino plays his magic flute. Animals appear and dance, enraptured to his music. Tamino hears Papageno's pipes sounding off stage, and hurries off to find him. Papageno and Pamina enter, searching for Tamino. They are recaptured by Monostatos and his slaves. Papageno plays his magic bells, and Monostatos and his slaves begin to dance, and exit the stage, still dancing, mesmerized by the beauty of the music. Papageno and Pamina hear the sound of Sarastro's retinue approaching. Papageno is frightened and asks Pamina what they should say. She answers that they must tell the truth. Sarastro enters, with a crowd of followers. Pamina falls at Sarastro's feet and confesses that she tried to escape because Monostatos had forced his attentions on her. Sarastro receives her kindly and assures her that he wishes only for her happiness, but he refuses to return her to her mother, whom he describes as a proud, headstrong woman, and a bad influence on those around her. Pamina, he says, must be guided by a man. Monostatos brings in Tamino. The two lovers see one another for the first time and embrace, causing indignation among Sarastro's followers. Monostatos tells Sarastro that he caught Papageno and Pamina trying to escape, and demands a reward. Sarastro, however, punishes Monostatos for his lustful behavior toward Pamina and sends him away. He announces that Tamino must undergo trials of wisdom in order to become worthy as Pamina's husband. The priests declare that virgin righteousness will sanctify life and make mortals like gods. Scene 1. A grove of palms. The council of priests of Isis and Osiris, headed by Sarastro, enters to the sound of a solemn march. Sarastro tells the priests that Tamino is ready to undergo the ordeals that will lead to enlightenment. He invokes the gods Isis and Osiris, asking them to protect Tamino and Pamina. Scene 2. The courtyard of the Temple of Ordeal. Tamino and Papageno are led in by two priests for the first trial. The two priests advise Tamino and Papageno of the dangers ahead of them, warn them of women's wiles and swear them to silence. The three ladies appear and try to frighten Tamino and Papageno into speaking. Papageno cannot resist answering the ladies, but Tamino remains aloof, angrily instructing Papageno not to listen to the ladies' threats and to keep quiet. Seeing that Tamino will not speak to them, the ladies withdraw in confusion. Scene 3. A garden. Pamina is asleep. Monostatos approaches and gazes upon her with rapture. He is about to kiss the sleeping Pamina when the Queen of the Night appears. She gives Pamina a dagger, ordering her to kill Sarastro with it and threatening to disown her if she does not. She leaves. Monostatos returns and tries to force Pamina's love by threatening to reveal the Queen's plot, but Sarastro enters and drives him off. Pamina begs Sarastro to forgive her mother, and he reassures her that revenge and cruelty have no place in his domain. Scene 4. A hall in the Temple of Ordeal. Tamino and Papageno are led in by priests, who remind them that they must remain silent. Papageno complains of thirst. An old woman enters and offers Papageno a cup of water. He drinks and teasingly asks whether she has a boyfriend. She replies that she does and that his name is Papageno. She disappears as Papageno asks for her name, and the three child spirits bring in food, the magic flute, and the bells sent from Sarastro. Tamino begins to play the flute, which summons Pamina. She tries to speak with him, but Tamino, bound by his vow of silence, cannot answer her, and Pamina begins to believe that he no longer loves her. She leaves in despair. Scene 5. The pyramids. The priests celebrate Tamino's successes so far and pray that he will succeed and become worthy of their order. Pamina is brought in and Sarastro instructs Pamina and Tamino to bid each other farewell before the greater trials ahead, alarming them by describing it as their final farewell. They exit and Papageno enters. The priests grant his request for a glass of wine and he expresses his desire for a wine. The elderly woman reappears and warns him that unless he immediately promises to marry her, he will be imprisoned forever. When Papageno promises to love her faithfully, she is transformed into the young and pretty Papagena. Papageno rushes to embrace her, but the priests drive him back, telling him that he is not yet worthy of her. Finale. Scene 6. A garden. The three child spirits hail the dawn. They observe Pamina, who is contemplating suicide because she believes Tamino has abandoned her. The child spirits restrain her and reassure her of Tamino's love. Scene change without interrupting the music to Scene 7. Outside the Temple of Ordeal, two men in armor lead in Tamino. They recite one of the formal creeds of Isis and Osiris, promising enlightenment to those who successfully overcome the fear of death. This recitation takes the musical form of a Baroque chorale prelude to the tune of Martin Luther's hymn Ach vom Himmel steht in. Tamino declares that he is ready to be tested. Pamina calls to him from off stage. The men in armor assure him that the trial by silence is over and he is free to speak with her. Pamina enters and declares her intention to undergo the remaining trials with him. She hands him the magic flute to help them through the trials. Protected by the music of the magic flute, they pass unscathed through chambers of fire and water. Off stage, the priests hail the triumph and invite the couple to enter the temple. Scene change without interrupting the music to Scene 8. A garden with a tree. Papageno despairs at having lost Papagena and decides to hang himself. The three child spirits appear and stop him. They advise him to play his magic bells to summon Papagena. She appears and, united, the happy couple stutter in astonishment and make bird-like courting sounds at each other. They plan the future and dream of the many children they will have together. Scene change without interrupting the music to Scene 9. A rocky landscape outside the temple. Night. The traitorous Monostatos appears with the Queen of the Night and her three ladies. They plot to destroy the temple and the Queen confirms that she has promised her daughter Pamina to Monostatos. But before the conspirators can enter the temple, they are magically cast out into eternal night. Scene change without interrupting the music to Scene 10. The Temple of the Sun. Sarastro announces the sun's triumph over the night. Everyone praises the courage of Tamino and Pamina, gives thanks to Isis and Osiris and hails the dawn of a new era of wisdom and brotherhood. Some musical numbers. Act 1. Der Vogelfänger Benicchia. Papageno. Scene 1. Dies Bildnis ist Bezaubern schon. Tamino. Scene 1. O Zitter nicht, mein Liebesohn. The Queen of the Night. Scene 1. Bei Mannen, welche Liebe fühlen Pamina and Papageno. Scene 2. Wie stark ist nicht den Zauberton. Tamino. Finale. Act 2. Oasis und Osiris. Sarastro. Scene 1. Alice fühlt der Liebe Freuden. Monostatos. Scene 3. Der Hallreich kocht in meinem Herzen. The Queen of the Night. Scene 3. In diesen heiligen Hallen. Sarastro. Scene 3. Ach, ich fühl's, ist verschwunden. Pamina. Scene 4. Ein Mädchen oder Weibchen. Papageno. Scene 5. Papageno and Papagena. Scene 10. Recordings. The first recording of the Magic Flute was of a live performance at the 1937 Salzburg Festival, with Arturo Toscanini conducting the Vienna Philharmonic and Vienna State Opera. The first studio recording of the work, with Sir Thomas Beecham conducting the Berlin Philharmonic, was completed in 1938. Both of these historic recordings have been reissued on modern recording media. Since then there have been many recordings, in both audio and video formats. Works inspired by the Magic Flute. The opera has inspired a great number of sequels, adaptations, novels, films, and other works of art. For a listing, see Works inspired by the Magic Flute. Bibliography. Books and articles. Berger, William, Foyle, David. The Magic Flute, New York, Black Dog and Amp, Leventhal, ISBN 9781579127596. Excerpts on Amazon. Baldry, Richard. Guide to Operatic Rolls and Amp Arias. Dallas, PSD Inc. ISBN 9781877761645. Branscombe, Peter. Die Zauberflöte. New York, New York, Cambridge University Press. ISBN 9780521319164. Buck, David J. Mozart and the Theatre of Der Wieden, New Attributions and Perspectives. Cambridge Opera Journal. 9, 195-232. DOI 10.1017 S09545867004808. Buck, David J. Die Zauberflöte, Masonic Opera, and Other Fairy Tales. Acta Musicologica, 76, 193-219. Buck, David J. 3 Posthumous Reports Concerning Mozart in His Late Viennese Years. 18th Century Music. 2, 125-129. DOI 10.1017 S147857060500028X. Chalet, Jacques. The Magic Flute Unveiled, Esoteric Symbolism in Mozart's Masonic Opera, an Interpretation of the Libretto and the Music. Rochester, Vermont, Inner Traditions International. ISBN 9780813,582. Deutsch, Otto Erich. Mozart, A Documentary Biography. Translated by Eric Blom, Peter Branscombe and Jeremy Noble. Stanford, Cal. Stanford University Press. ISBN 9780804702331. Frehin, Michael. The Authentic Magic Flute Libretto, Mozart's Autograph for the First Full Score Edition. Lanham, Roman and Amp, Littlefield Pub. Group. ISBN 9780810869677. Hartz, Daniel. Mozart, Haydn and Early Beethoven, 1781-1802. New York. W.W. Norton. ISBN 9780393066340. Malitz, Leo. The Opera Goer's Complete Guide, comprising 268 opera plots with musical numbers and casts. Translated by Richard Salinger, N.Y. Mead & Amp Co. ISBN 9781297599934. Rosen, Charles. A Classical Style. Haydn, Mozart, Beethoven. New York. Norton. The cited passage can be read online at Google Books. Solomon, Maynard. Mozart, A Life. New York, New York. HarperCollins. ISBN 97806090460. Schikaneder, Emanuel von Winter, Peter, Jarmarker, Manuela Weidlich, till Gerrit eds. Der Zauberflöte unter dem Titel Das Labyrinth oder der Kampf mit den Elementen, eine groß-heroisch-komische Oper ins Aufzugen von Emanuel Schikaneder, in Musik gesetzt von Herrn Peter Winter, Kapellmeister in Schöpfholz bayerischen Diensten. Vollständiges Textbuch, Erstveröffentlichung nach den zeitgenössischen Quellen und mit einem Nachwort. See also Das Labyrinth, other, Die Zauberflöte, Metropolitan Opera, the 25th of October 2014.